The landscape of the world we live in today is quite curious. There's buildings that touch the heavens, skyscrapers, but yet there's ghettos in their shadows. There's more art than ever been created, and yet there's a deeper hunger for meaning. This hunger is an ancient beast. It's the desire for money, fame, power, an endless chase for the thing that will finally make us complete. And controlling that beast is the ultimate source of power. The art of that control is the most powerful weapon that's ever been created. So, this is One Piece, and this is propaganda. A century ago, a man named Edward Bernays, the nephew of one famous Sigmund Freud, perfected this art. He gave it a friendlier name, public relations. Bernays believed that if you could understand the unconscious desires and fears of the masses, you could engineer their consent. You don't sell a product's function, you sell the feeling or the status that it provides. His most famous example? The Torches of Freedom. In 1929, he was hired by the American Tobacco Company to break the taboo against women smoking in public. So, he paid a group of glamorous, high society women to march in New York's Easter Sunday parade, all holding lit cigarettes. He told the press that these were torches of freedom, linking the act of smoking to the women's suffrage movement and the fight for equality. And it was a masterstroke. The goal was never to just sell tobacco. It was to sell rebellion, to sell empowerment. He took an object and attached it to a deep human desire, the desire for liberation. And thus, the beast was stared. This is the architecture of propaganda, a suggestion disguised as a choice, a story that makes an agenda feel like your own idea. It's the power to define reality itself, to frame the present, shape the future, and more importantly, rewrite the past. Because when you control the story of what happened, you control the meaning of everything that follows. It's the ultimate truth of power, spoken best by a man who understands it all too well.
Pirates are evil, the Navy is just, but that's only true because history tells us so. Children who've never known peace have different values than children who've never known war. The one who wins will rewrite the definition of right and wrong. They'll decide the future and how the past is written.
Doflamingo's words give us the key, but where do we find the lock? What if the propaganda machine is so deeply embedded in the story that we, the viewers, have become its unknown audience? We follow the sequence of events, the story of Luffy and the Straw Hats, and we assume that our perspective is the correct one. But who is to say that it isn't flawed? To even begin to answer that, we have to take a step back. In its broadest sense, One Piece is a story about dreams, adventure, and the flow of inherited will across generations. It's about the unspoken desires of people in a world where oppression and control are the norm. From the very start, we are given a primary perspective, that of the pirates, sailing the seas in search of treasure and ultimately freedom. And opposing them are the Marines, who work to maintain peace and curb the recklessness of these vagabonds. While other factions exist, these two are the foundation by which we interact with the narrative. The story lends itself to the pirate lens. So, let's start instead with the diametrically opposed faction. The Marines exist in a bizarre spot. To the public within the world of One Piece, they are the moral epicenter of society, a beacon of hope in lawless times. But we, the viewers, are aware of their dark underbelly, an outward face used by the world government to enforce its absolute and often brutal vision of justice. The organization is inherently flawed, yet it is filled with good people. This duality is the source of some of the most fascinating conflicts, and is explored perfectly through one man's words, the words of Fleet Admiral Sengoku. The inspiration for this video, in truth, actually stems from looking at Sengoku talking about God value retroactively. His recounting of events positions rocks as the central, singular evil, an evil so great, he claims, that the Pirate King and the Great Marine Garp had to join forces to stop him. Now, this retelling is a masterclass in propaganda. He's using a technique called card stacking, presenting only the information that supports his case while omitting everything that contradicts it. He conveniently leaves out the celestial dragons, the slaves, and the genocidal hunting tournament that was the real reason for the conflict in the first place. He stacks the deck to create a simple story of good versus evil. And why do we believe him? Well, this is the second technique, appeal to authority. Sengoku is given the epithet the Buddha, a title that intuitively disarms us, creating an expectation of wisdom and, most importantly, credibility. His authority makes the lie plausible. This is how a lie, passed down from a trusted source, poisons the well of history. In a similar vein, we intuitively take Rosinante's words as fact when he says the flamingo was born evil, quote unquote. But he is a clear and tragic unreliable narrator. He was far younger than Doflamingo, a child ill-suited to understand or integrate the elitist, complex ideals of the celestial dragons that had so thoroughly warped his brother. More importantly, he was obviously and heavily influenced by Sengoku. In his upbringing of Corazon, Sengoku neglects to outline how the creation of a monster such as Doflamingo is even possible in the first place. Why? Well, because to do so would be to indict his own superiors and the entire balance of power that they, and by extension, he advertently and inadvertently worked to maintain. Sengoku's decision to omit this context doesn't necessarily make him evil. It reveals his core philosophy. For some reason, he has decided that the absolute justice of the world government is, on balance, for the greater good. So, he passes down a simplified, more comfortable narrative to a surrogate son. And this is where the psychology comes in. The reason this simplified narrative is so effective, both for Corazon and for us, the audience, is a cognitive bias known as the just world hypothesis. It's easier to believe that Doflamingo is a natural-born monster than it is to confront the terrifying alternative, that he is the direct, predictable product of a completely broken and unjust system. Believing in inherent evil allows us to avoid questioning the fairness of the world itself. It's a psychological shortcut that lets the system off the hook. And this isn't an isolated incident. The narrative uses the exact psychological trick, again, in the land of Wano. The story goes to great lengths to paint Kurozomi Orochi as a one-dimensional, cackling cartoon villain. We're encouraged to hate him, to see him as a blight on the land who was born to burn, quote unquote. It's more comfortable that way, because the alternative is confronting the tragic truth that Orochi is the tragic, inevitable result of the Kozuki's clan's systemic persecution of his entire family. And like Doflamingo, he is a monster the system created, and his simple villainy is a convenient distraction from the sins of the good guys. This is the machine, a system that manufactures simple villains to hide its own complex sins, a system that relies on trusted faces to sell comfortable lies, a system that offers a clean, just world on the surface while burying the bodies underneath. But what happens when one of its own can no longer ignore the rot? What is the human cost for the man who becomes the most celebrated gear in this very machine? A man whose personal strength is so immense that it becomes the perfect shield for the system's moral weakness. This brings us to the man at the center of the lie, the hero of God Valley, the elephant in the room, Monkey D. Garp. Now for years, the fandom has been locked in a debate over his true allegiance. Many resent him, believing that, like Sengoku, he sees the world government as a necessary evil for the greater good. However, I personally disagree with this notion. I think that reading is too simple. Garp himself consistently forgoes orders to do what he feels is right and refuses to answer directly to the celestial dragons. His entire being is rebellious. In a thread that I wrote on Twitter, silent plug, I made a parallel between Garp and the legendary dog Hachiko, who embodies the Buddhist ethos of gratitude and steadfastness. It's a loyalty born from a great value for the dignity of life. We see this in the constant dog imagery associated with him and, ironically, in his connection to Sengoku the Buddha. So, from what we can infer, Garp grows up under highly impoverished conditions, fostering an almost exuberant gratitude for freedom and the agency to have a livelihood. In joining the Marines, he hopes to join a body that fights for these things. But, as the saying goes, the grass isn't always greener, and as he rose through the ranks, he began to understand what the Marine Corps truly was: a seat of pawns, cogs for maintaining the justice of the world governments. But in his ever-rebellious ways, Garp chose to continue to fight for what he believed in, to get stronger, with the hope of making a real difference. A noble, but frankly, over-idealistic way of looking at the world. And as they say, time is the greatest teacher. In time, he learns that the scale of the world is far beyond what he, even with his own great strength, could grasp. It's like sinking sand, a trap that draws you in the more you fight, a point of no return where you realize that the machine that you serve is built on a lie. This is a very real dilemma. In 1971, a military analyst named Daniel Ellsberg found himself in this exact trap. A fervent believer in the American mission in Vietnam, his work gave him access to confidential government information where he discovered a secret history of government lies, deliberately prolonging a war that he knew was unwinnable, costing hundreds and thousands of lives. He was a part of the machine, and the machine, he discovered, was a monster. His solution was to leak the Pentagon Papers, to expose the truth, no matter the personal cost. Ellsberg provides a framework for understanding the choice that Garp was faced with at God Valley. There, the truth was laid bare. He had come face to face with an amalgamation of evil so great that it superseded physical might, an overwhelming darkness that made his greatest vigor, and even the might of the era's greatest individuals, seem like a speck of dust. His strength was futile against the truth of the world itself. Before he could even process it, he was trapped in the webs of propaganda. His fate was sealed. He had become an object of the narrative, the so-called hero that saved the day. He couldn't fight the lie. So, he made a different choice. He would stand his ground and build something new from within the belly of the beast. Garp's answer was to wage his own war, not for the institution, but for the people within it. He refuses to leave, choosing to protect the Marines, not the corrupt political entity, but the people. He sees that most Marines are just regular people who decide to put their lives on the line for others, and in that, the public finds hope. His mission becomes protecting the ideal, the spark of individual bravery embodied by those good people, from the corrupting influence of the very institution that they all serve. He could leave, but if the people have no one to believe in, where do they stand? His answer is to raise a generation of Marines who share his values, gratitude, a respect for life, and the autonomy of the human spirit. But the problem still exists. The darkness is still there. And at Marineford, the machine does the same thing again. The footage they want to be shown is shown. And Garp knows it's wrong. His own grandson has fallen victim to the world he had hoped to protect him from. How do you manage that conflict? How do you manage your ideals against the propensity of the world itself? He couldn't, and he had learned that. It wasn't to be him. But even then, one of the seeds he had sown sprouted, and for a brief moment spoke words that reached everyone in the field, breaking the trance, pirate, marine, and civilian alike. A person who understood the emotional aspect of reality, that life isn't a series of checks and balances, but an experience to be felt. And in that moment, the seemingly impenetrable web of lies had a crack. And Garp knew someone had come who could achieve what he couldn't have. Someone who could bring reform, not from strength alone, but from a real ability to connect with the hearts of men. And therein lies the enemy of propaganda itself, human connection. Not the strength of one man, but a collective nucleus of individuals in unified emotional connection, standing for the truth. But what if there's another layer to the cake? What if the propaganda runs so deep that we ourselves don't even know what is what? Now, I love the idea of perspective. A lady at a McDonald's drive-thru smiling at a man could be, for her, just another interaction to be forgotten. For him, oh my goodness, it could be a moment of genuine happiness. Same moment, two different realities. We've broken down how propaganda works in the story, and we found its enemy, right? Well, yeah. End of video. Wait, what? You said I didn't discuss the pirate lens? Oh, yeah, right. So, from the very first page, it is established that this story is about a boy becoming a pirate. The lens is set. The main perspective by which our experiences will be balanced is that of the pirates. Luffy's journey is called A Great Voyage of Destiny, almost like a retelling of past events. Earlier, we discussed unreliable narrators like Sengoku and Corazon. Well, what if the meta layer to the story is that the ultimate unreliable narrator all along was Oda himself? Now, I know, crazy, right? But stay with me. The storyteller, the implied author, is actively shaping our perspective. He ensures that we cheer for the good guys by making it difficult to see the bad guys as anything but evil. And the most masterful example of this is how he sells us on the concept that in the real world we would find abhorrent, absolute monarchy. Now, let's look at how Oda's lens operates in Wano. We are told to celebrate the restoration of the Kozuki clan. But what are we actually celebrating? The Kozuki's right to rule is presented as an inherent fact of their bloodline, not the consent of the governed. The happy ending is the restoration of the correct bloodline. This is a fictional parallel to the divine right of kings, the doctrine that monarchs derive their authority directly from God, not from their subjects. To sell us on this, the narrative builds a perfect myth. Kozuki Oden, his flaws, abandoning his duty, his naivety, are framed as endearing quirks, leaving little room for legitimate criticism. He is the larger-than-life folk hero, and we are conditioned to believe that the system he represents must therefore be just. This is Oda's propaganda at its most subtle, making the audience cheer for the return of an unelected absolute monarchy, simply because it's presented as the good option. This narrative favoritism extends to the protagonist. Kobe could be seen as the deuteragonist of the story. He represents the other face of the coin. As Roger passes his will to Luffy, so does Garp pass his will to Kobe. But we never look at this story from Kobe's perspective. I mean, the narrator gives us an unfair picture. Would we view the story differently if we watched it from Kobe's POV instead? Would we care more about the women, the children, the pets who died because of the criminals released from Impel Down? Earlier, I mentioned Doflamingo's quotes. What if the story of One Piece is being told from an even darker place? A place where the real evil, the pirates, had won and now possess their liberty to retell history. Now, alright, let's stop there. I know I probably already triggered some people into clicking off the video, but hear me out. In discussing all this is not to say that this meta aspect of the story is factual. It is in fact though a layer, a lens that the story could be viewed through. But the most important question isn't whether Oda is a propagandist, it's whether we are. The narrative exists in the way that it's presented, but we are so stuck in the straightforward conventionality of it all that we often question nothing. We see the world government say, reading the poneglyphs is bad, and we rightly ask, why? We see them demand tribute, and we ask, for who? But then, in our rush to form a nucleus of anti-propaganda against the story's antagonists, we do something very fascinating. We replicate the very machine that we're fighting against. We strip nuance from the aspects of the story that demanded the most. We fail to question the moral grayness of our favorites, and we refuse to see the humanity in our villains. We have fostered our own propaganda machine, one that flattens complex characters into black and white cutouts. It's why so many have such a hard time grasping Luffy himself saying he isn't a hero, because we have built a machine that demands heroes and villains and has no room for anything in between. And I think Oda is intentionally showing us this very process in real time. Look at the current Elbaf arc. The story of the giants is being told to us by a narrator, but it spawns from Prince Loki being asked to provide context. This, I think, creates a brilliant double entendre. Is it an objective narrator speaking, or are we hearing Loki's biased retelling? Through these lenses, we see Rox D. Zebek, a man who, while definitely mischaracterized, has undoubtedly done many terrible things, instead being portrayed as a noble comrade. His questionable deeds are minimized, softened into footnotes in a grander, more heroic tale. The storyteller, whether it's the narrator or Loki himself, who idolized Zebek, is unreliable. We are being shown step by step how a good guy's perspective can warp history just as effectively as a bad guy's. And this brings us to the tragic conclusion of Wano's cycle of hatred. The story uses Hiyori as an agent to deliver the final verdict on Orochi. Her line, "Kurozomi was born to burn," is on the surface a clever piece of wordplay. I mean, Kurozomi means charcoal in Japanese, and the phrase is meant to poetically parallel her father, Oden, who was poetically born to boil. But, for better or for worse, this line has deeply negative connotations. It creates a narrative that completely ignores the root issue, the systematic persecution that creates a monster like Orochi in the first place. It makes it seem as though he is a symbol for all the evil of the Kurozomi, and in his death he is paying for their sins to end the nightmare. This, in my opinion, erases all context. It forgets that the Kurozomi clan as a whole was innocent, persecuted for the action of one by the very system that is now being restored. It inadvertently marks the Kurozomi name itself as negative. Think of Otama. Did you know she was a Kurozomi? Well, She will now be raised by the Kozuki Alliance system, her parents gone, her heritage likely forgotten and erased, in service of a unified, clean narrative. The problem is burned away, not healed. This erasure of context is how propaganda wins. Its ultimate goal is always simplification. It works by isolating us from history, from nuance, and most importantly, from each other. It replaces the messy, complicated truth of the human experience with a simple, clean, and easily digestible story. Whether the story is us versus them, buy this to be happy, or resistance is futile, the underlying strategy is always the same: to stop us from thinking critically. So, if propaganda works by dividing and simplifying, then its true enemy must be the direct opposite. Not a bigger army or stronger hero, but the radical act of choosing complexity and connection. This is the answer we find in the face of these seductive, simple narratives. It is the active formation of a collective consciousness built on mutual respect and a shared desire for the collective well-being and growth. It is the choice to connect, to seek out the complexity that has been hidden, to see the person behind the label and the system behind the monster. It is this collective search for answers, for the truth, that allows us to finally break free of the trance. For the story, we are in fear of losing understanding of the full scope. But in the real world, we are at risk of much, much greater. Now more than ever, across the globe, there are conflicts that require us to ask questions, to do our own research, to not just look at the information that's spoon-fed on a platter from a curated network, meant to keep us in the webs of propaganda, and if possible, make us unknowing participants. So, my charge for you: question everything, question yourself, form your own opinions, and in all of it, be guided by the drive to connect, to understand, to build a collective consciousness that seeks the truth. Because in the end, the only way to break the trance of the story that we are told is to find the truth in each other.